Yes. Oh, okay, great. Is Jerry in there? Oh, we're going to feed track him. We're going to feed track. All right, I think Jerry should be coming.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, mic check, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, mic check, DA's office, Syracuse, New York, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, mic check, DA's office.
Okay. Jerry's got to get in there anyway.
I kind of got
Okay.
I'm on time today.
Jerry's got
It's not in the schedule?
Yeah.
Ask him to make sure, ask him to make sure he rolls at the last one.
No, what's the one
Dave. Dave, Dan. You're going to roll a tape, right? Okay, that
Yeah.
still be time and day.
They're here.
Okay, well, whatever.
They actually made it.
Yeah, no,
So what, no, like I registered that we're in the I was like, how they hear you? Like, I was just,
Maybe I missed them with
yeah, Jerry.
It's like a high energy.
Okay.
Right.
What? Okay, you ready?
Yeah, do they want to take a level?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here comes the level.
Okay, here comes a level for wildlife number 1. Former Syracuse University Station charges. Wildlife 2. Former Syracuse University
Good job.
state child molestation charges.
Oh, you know what, Jerry? Because we were at the lakes, we're on that
Child
call.
sexual abuse.
We did try to.
I'm doing wildlife. Sorry.
Oh, right, go ahead.
Okay, ready?
Yeah, right.
So wildlife 1. Former Syracuse University assistant coach Bernie Klein will not face state child molestation charges. Wildline 2. Former Syracuse University assistant coach Bernie Klein will face state child molestation charges. Wildline 3. A New York district attorney addressed the child sexual abuse allegations against former Syracuse University assistant coach Bernie Klein. Okay, track.
What? She's hollow, man. We're in a room that's just all walls.
We get, I mean, I can try and put this coat over it.
Try to put it over there.
This is, oh, wait, let me see if I can put,
Yeah.
thanks, we got collaboration. All right, let's see, wildline 1. Former Syracuse University assistant coach Bernie Klein will not face state child molestation charges. Wildline 2. Former Syracuse University assistant coach Bernie Klein will face state child molestation charges. You got it? Is that better?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine? Okay, so let's, okay, thank you. And wildline 1, in 3, 2, 1. Former Syracuse University assistant coach Bernie Klein will not face state child molestation charges. Wildline 2. Former Syracuse University assistant coach Bernie Klein will not face state child molestation charges. Wildline 2. former Syracuse University assistant coach Bernie Klein will face state child molestation charges. While line 3, a New York district attorney addressed the child sexual abuse allegations against former Syracuse University assistant coach Bernie Klein. Okay, next chapter. Three men accused Klein of sexually molesting them in the 1980s when they were teenagers. Two were former ball boys. Third is 23-year-old Zach Tomaselli. Federal investigators are still looking into Tomaselli's allegations since they fall within the statute of limitations. Tomaselli faces his own sentencing charges in Maine. Bridge. Klein denies all the charges, but on an audio tape that recently became public, his wife acknowledged her husband's alleged sexual abuse when speaking with one of his accusers. Next track. The university fired the 65-year-old. Is it the 65-year-old Klein? Okay, I'll leave it the way it's put here. The university fired the 65-year-old Klein last month after that night. The university fired the 65-year-old Klein last month after that 2002 tape surfaced. Syracuse head coach Jim Boeheim. Syracuse head coach Jim Boeheim originally supported his longtime assistant, but since then has apologized for how he handled the scandal. Critics say he should resign. That's for CBS News, Syracuse, New York.
Yeah, want that last track again?
Last graph.
Last graph one more time. Take out what?
Take out what?
The, right, in front of 65-year-old?
Take out his name.
Oh, take out his name?
Yeah.
Syracuse head,
Find the 65-year-old head coach.
wait, the university?
Take out his name, so they got fined.
Oh, okay, the 60, okay. Okay, let's go to what? The university fired the 65-year-old last month after that 2002 tape surfaced. Syracuse head coach Jim Boeheim originally supported his longtime assistant, but has since apologized for how he handled the scandals. Oh, excuse me, 3-1. The university fired the 65-year-old last month after that 2002 tape surfaced. Syracuse head coach Jim Boeheim originally supported his longtime assistant, but has since apologized for how he handled the scandal. Critics say he should resign. That's for CBS News, Syracuse. They want Syracuse, New York. Hold on, let me just do that last thing. That's great. For CBS News, Syracuse, New York.
Now, is there a break in here?
Yeah, there is in here, but they have 4 wild lines. Thank you. Yes, really appreciate it. Hey, what's up?
Great tracking.
Yeah, everything. This is, I've really I've tracked in many places, but it's probably not the corner of the DA's office. Under code.
It's a little bit behind.
With Fed holding the code up.
That makes it easier.
Every one of you has been cataracts by the age of 30 from training.
Your arm isn't long enough.
Especially with a low layer.
Oh, yeah. What did you do last night? I love that.
Now,
More than two. You don't want to waste. Hey, you just come. I meant to ask her about it.
Sound recorder didn't even know that.
Oh, no, that was pretty much right.
Yep. 6:44. You know?
Yes. Well, my father never met him. I wanted to almost want to say that. Me too. Some things I don't forget.
Hey, Ned, can you get my check?
Sure. Fine denies all the charges. Fine denies all the charges, but on an audio tape that recently became public. Can you hear that? Hold on 1 second. Hold on. I'm just putting this in. Fine denies all the charges, but on the true tape that recently became public. I know, it's all like it's like
Now I just feel.
Fine denies all the charges. Charges, but on an audio tape that recently became public, his wife acknowledged speaking with one of his accusers. Fine denies all the charges, but on an audio tape that recently became public, his wife acknowledged sexual abuse. With this in the back.
Well, what do you want? No choice.
I know, but what, why not, and we can't even go like
I
right.
can't disconnect, because I may not get back up on.
All right.
So you got.
All right. Let's roll.
There you go, that's the girl.
It's pretty good right now.
If I want to roll.
Fine denies all the charges, but on an audio tape that recently became public, his wife acknowledged her husband's alleged sexual abuse.
If you want, take,
When speaking with one of his accusers.
I didn't know you were saying.
Are you're just showing me from here up, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Paul, Gary. I got the bridge out for you. You got teasers too? They bring them?
No.
Okay.
Oh, you can't see it. Oh, he's right there. He's over there.
I think we should just do the bridge.
Yeah, definitely do it.
Fine denies all the charges.
Yeah.
His wife acknowledged her husband's alleged sexual abuse.
Oh, somebody has to.
Hand that over, sir.
Sorry, guys. His wife acknowledged her husband's alleged sexual abuse.
Maybe I'll just take my oils off.
Sorry, just taking a bridge.
At Holy Square after like 12 days out there.
Oh, are you?
Your son's like died.
Yeah, Jerry? Lots. You ready?
Planning a level on it?
Level okay, Jerry?
Fine denies all the charges, but on an audio tape that recently became public, his
I gotta put the
wife,
phone down. All right, ready and
his wife acknowledged her husband's alleged sexual abuse. Okay.
Can I have, excuse me, can I take it back up to, thanks, hopefully we've done it. Okay, ready, here we go, they're rolling.
Fine denies all the charges, but on an audio tape that recently became public, his wife acknowledged her husband's alleged sexual abuse when speaking to one of his accusers. Safety,
Jerry, how was that? Oh, okay, hang on.
so you're only
How's that?
shooting it from here, right?
How about that? Jerry? Here we go, one more time.
I'm sorry, 3, 2, 1. Fine denies all the charges, but on an audio tape that recently became public, his wife acknowledged her husband's alleged sexual abuse when speaking to one of his accusers.
One more time.
3, 2, 1. Fine denies all the charges, but on an audio tape that recently became public, his wife acknowledged her husband's alleged sexual abuse when speaking to one of his accusers.
Jerry?
Thanks.
You all right?
Thanks, everybody.
All right, so we have no teasers, so,
Do you see the future of them saying?
They have, it's like wild lines, and then
They drop it.
I just taped a bunch of wild lines. I just taped, and then just chop everything in. I mean, we're probably going to
a whole room full of people.
Oh,
so we'll probably just do it outside.
Did you say
I
New
mean,
York
like,
District Attorney? Yeah, it's nice. Take the first wildline, turn that into the first wildline.
First,
The third.
third, New York District Attorney addresses child sexual abuse allegations.
It wouldn't be journalism, sir.
It's too, this is a little long. Yeah.
But there's a shame of it, though. I think we're ready.
District Attorney addresses child sexual abuse
Can you hear this?
against former Syracuse.
Beth English, this is District Attorney Chuck Dow. Hello. You got a guy? Yeah, it's kind of facing this way. Good? Okay, yeah.
Okay.
That one?
Hold on.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I can't hear you.
A district attorney addresses. A New York District Attorney addresses child sexual abuse allegations against former Syracuse University assistant coach. New York District Attorney addresses sexual abuse allegations against former Syracuse attorney.
This is Dan's camera off the Sports Center.
A New York District Attorney addresses sexual.
I am.
Okay, child sexual abuse allegations.
I don't know. Say that again.
Ready?
I'm just going to say against former Syracuse. Yeah.
All right,
She's
and
really
go ahead.
blowing me out here. I don't know what
Okay.
makes sense.
A New York District Attorney
No,
addresses.
3 seconds at the top.
Oh, yeah,
5
that's
seconds.
right.
5.
5.
What'd you say, Dave?
A New York District Attorney addresses child sexual abuse allegations against. Wow, jeez. Hold on a second. Sorry.
She's a little
I know, no kidding.
Can't
Against former. Okay. I'm just trying to make it shorter.
Well, you gotta do it long and short, you know that, right? The short one is just without your name.
Yeah.
Someone took a line. Yeah, so I talked to you guys. Yell up when she talks.
New York District Attorney addresses child sexual abuse allegations against former Syracuse University assistant. Against former Syracuse University assistant coach. Okay. 3, 2, 1. A New York District Attorney, 3, 2, 1. A New York District Attorney addresses child sexual abuse allegations against Syracuse University assistant. Again, 3, 2, 1. A New York District Attorney addresses child sexual abuse allegations against Syracuse University's former assistant coach Bernie Fine. I'm Ines Ferre in Syracuse, and I'll have those two again. 3, 2, 1. It's too long. It's just.
Just shorten it up if you want.
Yeah.
Shorten it up.
Yeah, but I gotta have like district attorney.
Yeah, the New York District Attorney addresses allegations against
But it's former.
Well, I'll be running it like
That's really coming up.
Okay.
Well, did you mention
3. A New York District Attorney addresses child sexual abuse allegations against the former assistant coach Bernie Fine. I'm Ines Ferre in Syracuse, and I'll have that story coming up. Does that work for him? Can you just check and make sure? Because I didn't say Syracuse University, but I said Syracuse.
do the same thing, that would mean
So just drop the name?
that's fine, do the same thing.
That's fine? Okay. Okay.
Should I call it directly?
5. A New York District Attorney, again, 5. This is a short one.
Got it.
A New York District Attorney addresses child sexual abuse allegations against a former assistant coach, Bernie Fine. No, former Syracuse University.
Test 1 2
assistant
test test
coach.
1 2 1 2 test 1 2.
A New York
Testing,
District
1
Attorney
2
addresses
3.
child sexual abuse allegations
talking
against
kind of
a
low.
former assistant coach, Syracuse
got
University,
something
Bernie
else?
Fine.
Sounds clean.
I don't love it, but
Okay, Joe?
can you just,
Oh, you got like an 11-second delay, so you gotta.
yeah, I mean, I'd rather,
Select? Okay, thanks. Okay, fine.
thanks, guys.
Hey, Dave. Dave,
I like shorter.
what did she just say? I won't touch anything. I can't hear that well. She's mouth for days, so help me a little bit, will you?
It's kind of
Dave, you can bring it to the channel. All right, just kind of here, so we're staying here.
Yeah, I know, it's like,
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Liz, just go find the podium, give me my check on that microphone.
okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm gonna do the present. 1, 2. Yeah, you know what, now, let me tell you. No, it just.
Seems like we have somebody
You gotta out.
Just power it down. There's a little button. Just flip it open. There's a little button.
Yeah.
You know what?
Of course, we knew. How are you? I should stand up, some teasers, wild lines, the whole. I'm doing well. And Santa.
I hear you.
Fancy meeting you here. I had a feeling. Oh, don't worry, I have been taking over the entire space.
Really make it special. It's oh, yeah.
But I have done a lot of well, how did I do it?
Yeah, look at your yes. No. That's fine.
Really?
I don't know.
It does have the same word.
They will, yeah.
Conversation with the makers.
When it doesn't work.
Yeah, I never get tired of that.
Yeah, I'm fine. I just want to make sure I was.
Say that again?
The guy in the blue shirt, he's our sound. I'm covering guys.
I think you knew that. I'd have called him down.
I did it in my business card.
I'm gonna pop this.
I did it on the floor, but that's what those broad shoulders.
Thanks, Captain.
First
You guys,
coming
please
in.
come.
Around here. Good morning, everybody. For those of you from out of town, my name is Bill Fitzpatrick. I'm the Onondaga County District Attorney. I want to report today to my community, as I promised I would, on the facts surrounding the Bernie Fine investigation, which obviously is ongoing. I want to talk not about rumors, not about hearsay, not about lies that you may have heard, but I want to talk about facts that, if necessary, I could prove beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. And I hope people actually take the time to listen to what I'm about to say and recognize that there is a time now for healing, both for the victims in this case and for our community as well. On November the 17th, 2011, I was attending a National District Attorneys Association conference in Nashville, Tennessee, when my cell phone went nuclear and I received a number of phone calls from media asking to comment on an ESPN story that Bernie Fine had sexually abused two teenagers back in the 1980s. This was the very first time in my life that I had ever heard the term sexual abuse and Bernie Fine in the same sentence. And I immediately made efforts to ascertain what, if anything, my office knew about this. Subsequently, I was called by a reporter and asked if I could confirm that an assistant basketball coach had been arrested that night. At that point, I took it upon myself to telephone Syracuse Police Chief Frank Fowler on his cell phone in an effort to gather information. I was assured by the chief that no arrests had been made, that there was much work to be done, and that, as usual, under long-standing policy, the district attorney's office would be kept in the loop regarding any investigation. I followed that phone call with another phone call to the chief at 2 o'clock the following day, left a message for him, and I asked him, I indicated to him that I was concerned that my office had been unable to ascertain anything about the investigation and why it was that there was a reluctance on his staff to share information with members of my office. That is the last contact I have had with Chief Fowler on this matter. I then became familiar with the ESPN report. Two men, both now adults, alleged that they had been fondled by Bernie Fine. One man, Bobby Davis, alleging the conduct happened hundreds of times and did not stop until he, Bobby, had turned 27. The other, Mike Lang, stepbrother of Bobby Davis, alleged that the conduct occurred numerous times and continued until such time as he, Michael, turned 19 years old. It is also clear that Mike Lang had been speaking out for the very first time, and it was also clear that Bobby Davis had made several attempts to reveal his molestation, first to the Syracuse Police Department, secondly to the Syracuse Post-Standard, next to ESPN, and finally to Syracuse University. It was later revealed that on October the 8th, 2002, while in Utah, Bobby Davis, at the direction of a reporter for the Post-Standard, surreptitiously and legally recorded a 46-minute phone conversation with Bernie Fine's wife, Lori Fine, in an effort to corroborate his victimization. From witness interviews and media accounts, this tape had been shared with the Post-Standard and ESPN back in 02, 03, and 04. The tape was never shared with the Syracuse Police Department until a few weeks ago, and also up until a few weeks ago, it was finally turned over to the District Attorney's Office. The tape was never shared with the law firm investigating the matter for Syracuse University in 2005, possibly because at that time Bobby Davis did not physically have the tape, or possibly because he was never asked by anyone at that firm to corroborate if he had any additional corroboration of his victimization. I immediately set out on a course of action to get to the bottom of this and to answer the following questions. Number one, were Bobby Davis and Mike Lang being truthful about the abuse that they alleged that occurred? As a prosecutor, you make judgments about credibility every day. It's the essence of what we do. No ethical prosecutor can put a witness under oath into a courtroom or into a grand jury or on an affidavit that he or she has reason to believe is not being truthful. We do not, as a long-standing policy, ask victims of sexual abuse to take polygraphs, and we are not going to change that policy in this case. And frankly, there is no need to. The factors affecting credibility that were examined in this case, as in any other case, were considered as follows. Did the victim report the abuse? Has the victim told a consistent story? Is there any physical evidence to corroborate that story? Is there a crime scene? Are there other corroborating witnesses? Is there any other documentary evidence, such as tape recordings, text messages, travel records, phone calls, credit card receipts, to corroborate the victim? And perhaps most importantly, based on over 150 years of child abuse prosecutorial experience that are contained within this district attorney's office, do we as prosecutors believe the person to be credible? On almost every single criteria, Bobby Davis came out as a credible person. In assessing Mike Lang, it is true that he had not reported these instances of abuse to our knowledge prior to 2011. and it should be noted that he avoided talking to the Syracuse University law firm back in 2005. However, on the remaining criteria, Mike Lang also comes across as a credible person whose allegations could ethically be presented in a court of law. In addition to considering the victim's own believability, the District Attorney's Office was able to interview a person on Sunday, November the 20th, with significant inside information about the Fine household, which left one with little doubt that an inappropriate relationship existed between Bobby Davis and Bernie Fine, and that Lori Fine was well aware of its existence. We then reviewed the October the 8th, 2002 tape of Bobby Davis speaking to Lori Fine. The significance of this tape cannot be overstated. Anyone listening to that tape, which will be authenticated by federal authorities, cannot fail to understand that Bobby Davis is being truthful, which makes it all the more confusing as to why the very people whose job it is to determine credibility, the sufficiency of corroboration, what investigative leads to follow, namely Onondaga County prosecutors, were never informed of the existence of the tape, and neither was the Syracuse Police Department. This was not a confidential source. Bobby Davis wanted his name to come forward. He had the courage to do that. There was no privilege attached to this tape, and when the Syracuse Police Department was asked to comment in 2003 about a possible Bernie Fine investigation, wouldn't prudence have dictated playing the tape for the Syracuse Police Department spokesman, at least to get his reaction? Or at the very least, encouraging Bobby Davis to turn it over to the district attorney or to the Syracuse Police Department or to someone at Vera House. Incredible as it seems, it appears that the only person made aware of the tape was Lori Fine, herself a possible target of criminal charges, thus depriving law enforcement of a possible investigatory lead by trying to catch her in an inconsistency or a discrepancy. Certainly the Syracuse Police Department would have done that had they had the chance to do so. The bottom line being that in 02, 03, 04, 05, and in 2011, Bobby Davis and Mike Lang would be judged to be credible. But for the obvious problem of the statute of limitations, their allegations would have resulted in the arrest of Bernie Fine, at least for the misdemeanor charge of sexual abuse in the third degree. I make no judgment as to what the outcome of a trial would have been, or whether Mike Lang and Bobby Davis could have withstood the rigors of cross-examination, and it is not my place to pronounce Bernie Fine guilty of anything. It is my place, however, especially in light of recent events, to affirm that these two victims are believable. We next proceed to my question number 2. Are there other victims? Were these victims' cases, if they exist, not subject to being barred by the statute of limitations? Are there other children in jeopardy? This is, of course, a critical part of any child abuse investigation. My inquiry into this area was hampered by no shared information from the Syracuse Police Department. One question that immediately jumped into my mind: were Child Protective Services notified? Child Protective have avenues of investigation that are not available to normal law enforcement personnel. I discovered that no one had notified them, a situation that I remedied. I am convinced that the efforts to deflect responsibility and point fingers at other agencies has now given way to what this is all about, the protection of children. I believe the Syracuse Police Department will be doing exhaustive work under the direction of the United States Attorney to ascertain if there are any other victims in this case. Cases that fall under the exclusive jurisdiction of state law will be referred to this office. No cases have been referred as of yet. Cases where there is federal or joint jurisdiction will be prosecuted by the federal authorities. One such case has surfaced, which I will discuss in a moment. I cannot emphasize enough how I encourage any possible victim to draw on the strength of Bobby Davis and Mike Lang and to come forward and to report any abuse to law enforcement, or at the very least, to reach out to the professionals at Vera House. I do not know why it was necessary in this case, contrary to any other case in my 30 years as a prosecutor, to subpoena the Syracuse Police Department's file. I do know it was a last resort. I do know it was preceded by numerous conversations between staff, between investigators, between myself at one point and the mayor. I do know that on Tuesday, November the 29th, a motion to quash argument was scheduled before the Honorable James Murphy. And I know that prior to that date, obviously in recognition of absolutely no legal authority to support their position, the city dropped that motion to quash, and the chief of police and the deputy chief of police represented to the Corporation Council that they would comply with the subpoena and avoid a court fight. I now know that this was a total fabrication. It actually took another court appearance a week later before Justice Murphy again compelled the Syracuse Police Department to turn over their file, something that the chief had promised to do when I first talked to him in Nashville. Which brings us to two additional alleged victims of abuse by Bernie Fine who reached out to the Syracuse Police Department. Victim number 4, who has been referred to in a published story in the New York Daily News, has not been identified, nor will identify him today for obvious reasons. He is currently serving a life sentence as a persistent felony offender. When he reached out to authorities, the Syracuse police detectives were concerned that he had allegations of special treatment at the hands of this district attorney's office, and that may have been as a result of a friendship between the district attorney and Bernie Fine. Let me be clear. I know Bernie Fine. I'm sure most people in the Syracuse Police Department hierarchy know Bernie Fine as well. I have had less than 15 conversations with Bernie Fine in my life, probably less than 10. The last time I met him was at the Temple Adith Yeshua dinner, where we spoke for about 3 minutes. Up until last week, I didn't know where Bernie Fine lived. I did not know he had another business. I don't know much about his family. In short, there's not a reason in the world why this office should have been kept in the dark by the Syracuse Police Department about this alleged victim number 4. Had they contacted us, we would have revealed several pieces of correspondence that date back many, many years from this individual, which would, to say it charitably, belie his claims of sexual abuse at the hands of Bernie Fine. This correspondence, incidentally, under my constitutional and ethical duties by the Brady decision and the Giglio decision, decisions that require prosecutors to turn over exculpatory material to defense counsel, we will be sharing this correspondence with Bernie Fine's defense lawyers. Fulfilling my statutory duty as a mandated reporter, I will forward all our information on this individual to my colleague Cy Vance, the District Attorney of Manhattan, despite the fact that the statute of limitations has long since expired. In an effort to completely understand this case, there simply is no victim number 4. We all know from published media reports that there is an alleged victim number 3, Zach Tomaselli of Maine. Mr. Tomaselli has alleged no illegal conduct within the confines of Onondaga County by Mr. Fine. My office confirmed that as recently as yesterday in a conversation with Mr. Tomaselli. He does allege that he was abused by Mr. Fine in Pittsburgh, where he traveled on Monday, January the 21st, 2002, to attend the Tuesday, January the 22nd, Syracuse versus Pitt basketball game. That case is in the control of federal authorities or state authorities in Pittsburgh. Pursuant to my statutory obligations, under the Giglio decision and Brady decision, I have and will be providing Bernie Fine's defense counsel with records we have obtained from Syracuse University regarding the team's travel arrangements for that particular game, which consisted of traveling from Tennessee to Pittsburgh. We will also be providing defense counsel with hotel records, which we have obtained in the course of our investigation. And finally, and most importantly, we will be providing defense counsel with school records from the Copenhagen School District relating to Mr. Tomaselli's attendance on the days in question. We will also provide our entire report to the United States Attorney's Office. As this is a pending federal investigation, I defer all questions on Mr. Tomaselli to the United States Attorney's Office. And finally, question number 3. What action did the Syracuse Police Department take in 2002? What action did Syracuse University take in 2005? And was there an institutional breakdown? The information that the Syracuse Police Department provided from 2002 consisted of a few handwritten notes regarding Bobby Davis. It appears that a month earlier, a friend of Mr. Davis had called the Syracuse Police Department to indicate that someone would be calling. Mr. Davis, when he did call, spoke to an APU detective while Mr. Davis was pulled off to the side of the road while traveling somewhere in Utah. It is difficult, if not impossible, to reconstruct what exactly was related to the APU detective. I need to point out that this detective had then and has now an outstanding reputation. He is dedicated, he comes to court prepared, and he has a deep-seated devotion to the protection of children. He took some information over the phone from a person he had never spoken to before who was in Utah. He correctly advised the caller that the statute of limitations had run on the misdemeanor conduct alleged, and according to the detective, he encouraged the caller to provide the names of anyone else who he believed might be in danger, and if necessary, to come in and talk face-to-face with the detective. The detective never heard from Bobby again, and he reported the call to his sergeant. That sergeant has no present-day recollection of this conversation. Much later, Chief Dennis Duval was made aware of an inquiry by a Post-Standard reporter as to whether the Syracuse Police Department had an active investigation regarding allegations of sexual abuse against Bernie Fine. The Syracuse Police Department spokesman truthfully answered that there was no such current investigation. Chief Duval was informed in a general way of the allegations and that the caller had been encouraged to come in and go, quote, on the record. Chief Duval made a judgment call that based on the unusual circumstances of the call, based on the fact that the conduct alleged constituted misdemeanors wherein the statute of limitations had long since run, and based on the fact that any public pronouncement of an investigation of Bernie Fine would forever alter Fine's life, whether the allegations were true or not, that a file would not be opened until such time as the victim came forward. There is not a shred of evidence that we have uncovered, or a suggestion of evidence, that anybody at the Syracuse Police Department was directed to ignore this matter, destroy their notes, or to encourage Bobby Davis to remain silent. Certainly in hindsight, more should have been done to encourage Bobby Davis to come forward, to make him feel welcome, to come in and give a statement, and new procedures have been put in place by Chief Fowler to address that issue. In September of 2005, Syracuse University Chancellor Nancy Cantor received an anonymous email from a person alleging that he had been sexually abused by a coach at Syracuse University and that he believed other young boys may be in danger. The Chancellor immediately referred the matter to the Office of Human Resources, and officials were able to make contact with Bobby Davis, the author of that email. Eventually, the law firm of Bond, Shinnick & King was hired to conduct an investigation, and at the conclusion of a 4-month probe, the firm submitted a report consisting of unsworn statements from the victim, Bobby Davis, from Bernie and Lori Fine, from a member of the Syracuse University Athletic Department, and a further alleged victim that Bobby Davis thought may have been abused by Bernie Fine. 2 phone conversations were conducted with a member of the Syracuse University Athletic Department and a person who had dinner with Bernie Fine, Bobby Davis, and others at a location in Florida. Both Bernie Fine and Lori Fine denied any allegations of abuse, as did a member of the Syracuse University Athletic Department. The additional possible victim, whose name was provided by Bobby Davis, denied being sexually abused by Bernie Fine. A phone conversation with another witness added little to the probe, and a final phone conversation with a Syracuse University Athletic Department member confirmed that Bobby Davis did complain to him about sexual abuse, though that individual was unsure of what, if anything, he did with that information. Simply put, this investigation was inadequate. There was little, if any, intellectual curiosity exhibited in the report in terms of follow-up, developing corroborating evidence, developing new leads or new witnesses, exploring a number of red flags that were raised in Bernie Fine's statement, not personally interviewing perhaps a very important corroborative witness of Bobby Davis's story, among other things. It is my understanding that this report is currently under review by a separate law firm. I suspect that after several months, the conclusion of that report will read, child abuse investigations should be conducted by professional child abuse prosecutors, and there should be mandatory reporting of child abuse by all adults, no exceptions to law enforcement. I'd like to make a few final thoughts. Since day one of this incident being reported, the situation at Syracuse University has been lumped together with the situation at Penn State. What happened at SU has been referred to as a scandal, a cover-up, an institutional failing. talking heads, editorial writers, professors with little or no familiarity with the facts that I've just outlined, and even less experience in investigating child abuse, have called for Chancellor Cantor to resign, or in the alternative for Coach Jim Boeheim to resign. Let me make some comments on the principals involved. To Bobby Davis. Bobby, I'm sorry it took so long. I wish I had met you as a prosecutor in 2002. Even more importantly, I wish I had met you as a prosecutor back in the 1980s. We wouldn't be here today. Someday your kids are going to ask you questions about why you did what you did, why you subjected yourself to the scrutiny. And your answer should be easy. You did it because it was the right thing to do. You were fighting for other kids. And to Mike Lang, who still feels he could have done more to help his little brother, Mike, it's never too late to do the right thing. And let it be known by everybody in this room that you did just that, the right thing. As for the Penn State SU comparison, it's not only inaccurate, it's not fair. And to those of you calling for resignations of good people who in hindsight may have acted differently had they had a more complete picture, such as a tape recording, ask yourselves this question. Hasn't Bernie Fine caused enough pain in this community? He allegedly abused the trust and bodies of 2 boys. He let his friend go out and attack the victims, never once warning him that they were telling the truth, and then stood by and did nothing while that friend was vilified. And what exactly did Chancellor Nancy Cantor do wrong? It's hard for me to call a 4-month investigation by a prestigious law firm a cover-up. If she made a mistake, it was trusting the report. From day one, Chancellor Cantor has fully cooperated with my office. She understands the benefit of getting the District Attorney's Office involved early on in any future case. She understands the dynamics of child abuse. She's acted decisively since these allegations surfaced, and I hope she stays as Chancellor for many years to come. The bottom line, I think, is to let the person with the biggest stake in all of this, Bobby Davis, speak for all of us. He's not calling for anyone to resign. He just does not want what happened to him to happen to anyone else. And as he noted to one of my prosecutors yesterday, there's an awful lot of good that can come of this. From Jim Boeheim's learning, from his apology, he can do a lot of good for abused kids. Thank you, Bobby Davis. That was well said. I'll be glad to take any questions from you.
At any point did Dennis Duval, to use your phraseology, keep you in the loop when he was determining whether to pursue this case?
This case was never reported to me as a incident of sexual abuse allegations against Bernie Fine.
Was it mentioned to you at all?
No.
Coach Boeheim, was he mentioned in the university report?
Yes, Coach Boeheim was interviewed. A statement was not taken from him. He was aware of the allegations and he cooperated fully. And I think when you look at his statements, which he has since apologized for, you have a better understanding of why he made them. Not to condone them, but he was under the impression that this had been reviewed not only by the police department, but by 2 news agencies and by the university. And that was probably led to the frustration of those comments.
What about Zach Tomaselli, this 3rd victim? You talked about the school records. Do the attendance records show he was in school that day?
I have to turn over exculpatory material that tends to indicate either that the accuser is not telling the truth or that there is something beneficial to the defense. I don't turn over things that other than that, and I have turned those over to defense counsel.
Does it show he didn't travel with the team?
Any of those questions should be referred to the United States Attorney. They're the one that used him to get a search warrant.
You don't give him credibility, though.
Anybody else?
Is it clear from what you said that Coach Boeheim only was aware of the allegations? Because he had said on a number of occasions, we'll see what happened on my watch. Can you expound on what may have happened?
I think it's important to note what our investigation showed from Bobby Davis and Mike Lang. Mike Lang was unequivocal. He said, Coach Boeheim knew nothing about what was going on with me and Bernie Fine. We have this impression that this was some massive institutional failure, that there were these numerous victims out there. I hope that doesn't turn out to be the case, but it is not, as of this moment, the case. Bobby Davis indicates that there was one time that Coach Boeheim saw him in a hotel room with Bernie Fine. There was nothing untoward about it, his dress or his demeanor. It was simply he was in a hotel room out of town with Bernie Fine. Coach Boeheim does not recall that. That is the extent of Bobby Davis's and Mike Lang's indication of what Boeheim knew or didn't know.
By directing Bonchinick and King to handle the investigation, you said that they have no experience in or this kind of investigation for alleged child abuse. Were the cards already dealt in this that they would not find any kind of?
No, I don't think that's true. The latter part of your question, I don't think that's true. I think that had they pursued this vigorously, I think that some things would have come out. I mean, all I can tell you is that if we had investigated this, and I say that because we're professionals, if we had investigated this in 2005 or 2002, we would not be here today. We would have corroborated Bobby Davis's story. I don't know that the result would have been any different. The statute of limitations had still run. I don't know if we would have found any other victims, but I suspect that Bernie Fine would have been fired a long time ago.
Did you feel that they had an obligation to contact you?
Well, there's a legal obligation, no. Did they have a common sense obligation, a professional obligation? Absolutely. Why wouldn't you?
Isn't that an institutional failure?
I think it's a failure in trusting the report. I don't know that it's a quote institutional failure. I wouldn't go that far.
What is your view of the search warrants that were issued by the federal court, considering they were based on the statement of this third accuser whose credibility is now in question?
I would defer any questions regarding the search warrant. I haven't seen the search warrant. Defer any questions on that, Matt, to the United States Attorney.
Bill, what do you think about the impact of this case so far on our community? As the chief law enforcement officer, talk to me about overall how you think this community is handling it or not.
Crises have a tendency to bring out the best in people, and they bring out sometimes the worst in people. Some instances we've seen here, I think, conduct that's inexplicable. I do not, for the life of me, know why the district attorney would have to go to court to get a file. I've never seen it happen. I speak with DAs all over the country. I'm an officer in the National DAs Association. I've gotten dozens of phone calls. Why is that going on? I've never received an adequate explanation for that. That's unfortunate. But in terms of the community, yeah, we're going to be fine. We're going to do just fine. This is a very, very, I think, progressive, enlightened community when it comes to the area of child abuse. We have one of the best child advocacy centers, frankly, in the country. Julie Cecil, if you don't know her, you should know her. She's phenomenal at what she does. And just, we want to criticize Jim Boeheim for what he said, but, isn't it interesting that in 9 years, nobody made any mistakes. Everybody did the right thing. Nobody, Post Standard didn't do anything wrong, ESPN didn't do anything wrong, Bonchinick and King didn't do anything wrong. Nobody did anything wrong. And yet here we are. One guy does something wrong, and a week later, he apologizes for it. He mans up. And now people want to get rid of him. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think we're going to be a better, stronger community the minute this is all over.
How do you think it'll end?
That's up to the United States Attorney's Office. I can't bring Bernie Fine to justice for what he did to Bobby Davis and Mike Lang. And if there's other victims out there, we'll certainly pursue them with the fullest extent of the law. And at the United States Attorney's Office, I have every confidence if there's any evidence in the matters that they've seized, or if they can put a case together regarding a federal crime, they'll do it. Yes.
You've been described in many ways. I'll pick one word out, passionate, with a case like this is involved. Looking back a couple of weeks ago when you held your previous news conference, are there any comments that you made then that you regret having made, or that you would walk back from a bit?
The answer is no, but I regret making it public. I came into the office that day and had to dismiss some cases in city court because I was told that my office not only would not get reports, but we'd have to pay 50 cents a page for them, show ID, and walk across the street. It's a pettiness that, for some reason, you folks in the local media don't want to cover. I brought it up a week ago. My response is I got a nice PR glitzy response from the mayor's office that said I was histrionic. I got an editorial from the Post-Standard saying that I had lost my temper. Not one single reporter asked the mayor or the chief of police a question about any of the specific issues I raised. At some point, you know, you got to wonder.
Have you got to the bottom of what you perceive to be the problem with the police department, of what moment things changed?
No.
A lot of people find it hard to believe that with your personal relationship with Dennis Duval, that you were kept in the dark, even though he became aware of this. How do you answer to that? And
you know, that's really simple. Dennis and I are, in the interest of full disclosure, if you're not from here, he's a great guy. There isn't a chance in the world that Dennis Duval would think that children were being abused by anybody, and not do whatever he could about it. He was faced with a choice. It was a judgment. There's dozens of calls that we get in the DA's office. We'd like to talk about someone who is in the clergy, someone who's in government, someone who's in the news media, someone who's doing, you know, some type of crime. You have to make a judgment as a prosecutor and a police officer. Do you take the next step? Do you send subpoenas out? Do you begin investigations when everybody is leaking things today? I mean, I was considering withdrawing my subpoena in front of Judge Murphy and just resubscribing to the Post-Standard. You know, the Syracuse Police Department was leaking something out every day that they chose to do, okay? In that environment, if I get a call tomorrow and says, you know, Mr. Jones, Miss Smith, prominent person, I proceed very cautiously. My number one goal, I want to make sure that children are protected. If the person says that so-and-so is a kleptomaniac, do I then, you know, begin an investigation? Then I get a call from Jim Kenyon. We have a report that you're investigating a prominent city councilor, a prominent member of the county executive staff for this or for that. It's a very, very difficult decision. Dennis made a choice back in 2003. I understand what he did. I might have handled it differently, but you know, what if he had implemented a full-blown investigation and Bobby Davis turned out not to be credible? What then? Bernie Fine's life would still have been ruined. It's a tough call. Yes, sir.
In the absence of a new victim, it sounds like your office is not going to be in a position to do any kind of prosecution. Is that right?
That's correct. The statute of limitations have long run. I am fairly certain they've run for Bobby Davis and Mike Lang on federal charges as well, but I don't mean to speak for the United States Attorney. The only active prosecution that I'm aware of right now that is within and not barred by the statute of limitations would be Zach Tomaselli's allegations of what occurred in Pittsburgh in 2002.
Are you actively looking for any victims? Are you?
Yes.
Is your investigation?
Yes, the Syracuse Police Department has gathered records, and you got to understand the potential victims here, and I'm not saying this to frighten anyone because no one has come forward, but we would ask people who are parents out there, guardians, if you have had a child that has had contact with Bernie Fine, talk to that child. I don't see how the Syracuse Police Department is going to be able to interview literally thousands and thousands of children. They've gotten lists of ball boys, they've gotten lists of people that have attended the SU basketball camps. The numbers of those kids are literally in the thousands. It can't be done. But if anyone listening to my voice, you know, somebody step up to the plate as a parent, make sure you have a candid and frank conversation with your kid on this case or any case.
Do you believe that there are other victims? Has Bobby Davis made any indication that he's aware that there are other victims who may not be speaking?
You know, this type of sexual abuse, I don't want to suggest that any sexual abuse is common, but you see particular patterns of it, and this is an unusual pattern. So I don't want to speculate and cause unnecessary anxiety and say, are there other victims out there? There could be, there could not be. There may be, there may not be. Bobby Davis, I'll tell you though, if you give an award at the end of the day for persistence, you got to give it to that guy. And he's 39, I keep calling him a kid because I see him in my mind as a kid, a poor little kid that was taken advantage of. But here's a guy that, you know, couldn't get anybody to listen to him for 9 years, and he still went forward and finally found a forum.
Will the grand jury issue a report?
Sorry?
Will the grand jury issue a report?
No, the grand jury will take no public action as of today.
Well, you indicated in your comments that perhaps all adults should be mandated reporters, I believe.
Yes, I don't.
Will that be something that a grand jury would want to report out?
I think that I think that is so obvious and so necessary that I don't think it takes a grand jury report to recommend that. Why should a truck driver be different from a pharmacist, be different from a school teacher, be different from a cop, be different from a ditch digger? If you're an adult and you have knowledge of a child being sexually abused, you should be a mandated reporter, no exceptions.
Bill, on the look, sorry.
You described Bernie Fine as being different in this case. Can you describe how this is different based on your past experience?
Normally, this type of conduct escalates into, such as you see in Penn State with the Sandusky individual, what he's alleged to have done. We're talking about graphic instances of penetration of the victim or copulation, anally or orally. In this particular case, Bobby alleged it never proceeded past, Bernie Fine manually abusing him, and that is not unheard of. I have a team here of people who have prosecuted literally thousands of child abuse cases. It's not unheard of, but it is unusual.
Were you able to at all review the incident where a couple of calls were supposedly made to your office?
Yes.
Were you able to go back and at least flesh out what might have happened?
Yes, there's a number of possibilities, most of them not nefarious. First of all, you have to understand, Rick Trumfio is my guy, so I'm biased when I say this. Everybody in this room knows Rick Trumfio returns phone calls. He keeps a lot of phone. I saw it. I couldn't believe it. I was going to make everybody do it, but they probably all quit. And there's just simply no record of Danielle calling the office. And what's perplexing to me is that after she says that she made these 2 phone calls, she sees Rick Trumfio on a dozen occasions. And never once went up to him and said, "Hey, knucklehead, when are you going to return my calls?" I don't know. There's a gap there, Bill, that I don't think I'll be ever able to get to the bottom of.
Mr. District Attorney,
sir,
how would you characterize the tape?
I would characterize the tape as devastating. You saw the Chancellor's reaction to it. If you haven't, in this room, if you haven't listened to it, you ought to. It's 46 minutes long. It's clearly an individual, Lori Fine, who knows exactly what's going on, who knows exactly what happened to Bobby Davis. How you could say it's ambiguous or not corroborative of Bobby Davis's molestation, frankly, that's just beyond me.
So the fact that those who knew about the tape did not interview you about it, what does that mean to you?
I leave that to somebody at the Newhouse School to comment on. We have a pretty good journalism school here in Syracuse, and I would defer to that question. I got enough problems with the paper, okay? Please, give me...
If you had the tape, though, Bill, would you have been able to bring charges against Lori Fine?
Now, here's what we would have been able to do. First of all, we would have known flat out the kid was telling the truth. Then we would have done exactly what we're doing today. Are there other victims? Are there other potential victims who have been abused but who chose not to come forward? Once they see that Bobby Davis is being believed right off the bat, that's going to give them strength to come forward, like I hope Bobby Davis's and Mike Lang's decisions today give other people strength out there, whether it's in Bernie Fine's case or any other case. But we certainly would have conducted a full-blown investigation, as would Chief DeVal. I can say that with certainty, not with hypothesis. I can say that with certainty.
Is there an indication why Bobby Davis didn't share the tape with the university or with police?
He didn't have the tape physically with him in 2005. And he wasn't asked about it. And the only thing I can suggest at that point is, Bobby certainly, if he felt frustrated at that point, you'd have to say he was justified.
This 4th person that you talked about, credible or not credible? I don't remember exactly what you said about
I'm saying there is no victim number 4. I'm simply bringing it out because there was a story about him in the Daily News, and if this file is foiled 10 years from now, I don't want someone saying, well, the DA never addressed quote-unquote victim number 4. There is no victim number 4.
Are there more calls coming in to agencies that deal with abuse in our community because of this case in the last 3 weeks?
I can't answer that, Michael. I don't have specific knowledge of that. Historically, I can tell you that's generally the case. When you see someone believed, that is embraced and accepted and trusted, that gives other people strength. So historically, but I can't say specifically it's happened in this case.
What was your impression of Coach Boeheim's remarks, particularly last Friday when he did make that apology? What were your thoughts on that?
My thoughts were, Coach, you did the right thing. You did the right thing. Jim Boeheim has done more for kids in this community than any 10 people I know. He's also a stubborn German. He's also a very proud guy, and he's an intensely loyal guy, and he screwed up. He trusted a friend for 40 years, a friend who was abusing not only 2 boys, but he was abusing a lot of other people as well. And when I say that, I mean abusing their trust. And when Coach Boeheim was, I think he had a little bit of a catharsis when he visited the CAC, the Child Advocacy Center. And, Bobby Davis was asked, I was talking to him yesterday, and, what did you think of Coach Boeheim's remarks? He says, nobody ever makes Coach Boeheim do something unless he wants to do it. And that's good enough for me.
Was there any requirement, was there any requirement that you feel should have existed for the people who were aware of the allegations made but had not made them public to at least monitor Mr. Fine in some way, or perhaps really review him being in charge of this basketball camp where you have a number of young people coming into town?
That's a tough question, Bill, and it's a fair question. In hindsight, sure. But at the time, if you're looking at it and you say, do people make false allegations against other people? Yeah, it happens all the time. I mean, I've been sued 6 times, and every lawsuit's been on page 1, and every dismissal's been on page 52. Things happen. People, I've had a medical examiner say that I, forced him to commit perjury. I mean, it's my professional reputation on the line there. It's not true. Does that mean that every time I speak that what I say should be, scrutinized as maybe this guy's lying to us? I don't think so. People trusted professionals. They thought the police had investigated it. They thought Post Standard had investigated it. They thought ESPN had investigated it. They thought SU had investigated it. So, in hindsight, sure. But at least we're doing the right thing now.
Bill, one more thing on the community.
No doubt in your mind as you stand here today that Bernie Fine absolutely abused at least 2 children.
I want to be clear. It's not proper for me to say that Bernie Fine is guilty. What I'm saying to you, there's no doubt in my mind that if presented with these 2 victims today, then the statute of limitations had not run, there would be criminal charges against Bernie Fine that I would ethically feel comfortable asking a jury to convict him of beyond a reasonable doubt.
On the community, your affection for this basketball program is well known by those of us who know you. On the program and Bernie Fine's impact on it, what do you think that is, as somebody who really around here is sort of a legendary fan of the Orange basketball team?
I think the impact of it is that, and this, Michael, isn't unique to Bernie Fine. You know that we've prosecuted in 20 years that I've been the elected DA, many high-profile sex abuse cases. Some of the people that have prosecuted and investigated those cases are standing right here. You always have this dynamic that there's an immediate show of support. Sometimes it's, I don't believe the allegations, or this victim has a drug problem, or this victim has a credibility problem. And oftentimes that's true. Why? Because sexual abusers, they pick the most vulnerable kids they can find. I would be surprised if one of my 3 kids had been the victim of the sexual abuse, because they were well educated. They were, I taught them at a very, very young age how to take care of themselves. That's not true of every kid in our community. So sometimes when we rush to judgment and we want to say, oh, the DA's, wrong, whether it's a teacher down at the Onondaga Nation, or whether it's a priest or a clergyman, or whether it's a high-profile politician, let the system run its course. And Syracuse University is going to be just fine. They're going to be just fine.
And the team you love?
Well, they didn't cover last night, but other than that, no, yes. I'm not going to. If you're from out of town, I'm a SU grad. I'm a I'm a very, very avid Syracuse basketball fan. That doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing here today. It can't. I can't play favorites. If I've been playing favorites, then so I must have fooled somebody because I've been reelected 5 times, and I don't think that's the case.
If the tape, after it was made, had been presented to your office, would you have been able to prosecute that?
No, the statute of limitations on Bernie Fine's conduct vis-a-vis Bobby Davis was, what he did to Bobby Davis was of a misdemeanor level under the state of New York. I don't agree with that conceptually, but that's the way the law is. If you manually abuse a 13 or a 14 or a 15-year-old, that is a misdemeanor in the state of New York. And in 2002, the statute of limitations had run on that conduct. But it's not to say that we wouldn't have done other things.
What, if anything, can come of Lori Fine out of all of this?
I do not know. Certainly, if the statute of limitations had not run, and listening to that tape, she certainly would have been investigated for endangering the welfare of a child, if not complicity in what happened to Bobby. But I know that Lori Fine, is going to be interviewed by federal authorities. We have not interviewed her. We have deferred interviewing her or attempting to interview Bernie Fine out of respect for the federal investigation.
Was the university acting responsibly when they had Bonchnik and King, a law firm, already regularly on the payroll investigating the case?
Yeah, I think, you have to have a trust with your lawyer. Bonchnik and King is as far as I know, it's a very, very prestigious law firm in Central New York, and I don't know what they charge for this report, but I would expect it was pretty hefty. And you have a relationship with attorneys, and I would say that I wouldn't call them irresponsible for relying on the lawyers, but I think in the future we'd all agree, if you have a heart attack, I'm not going to go to an ear, nose, and throat guy. I'm going to go to a cardiologist, and we're the cardiologists of sex abuse right here.
Do you have any concerns that either an investigation by HR or BSK, another one unrelated to the Fine case, might not have been investigated as thoroughly?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Do you have any concerns that there's another investigation that Syracuse has done, unrelated to the Fine case, either through BSK?
Oh, you mean in cases as yet unknown?
Yes. Do you think this is just one thing where it wasn't investigated thoroughly, or other cases?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that oftentimes there is, cooperation between my office and the university. I want to think that this is an exception, and up until you're asking that question, no, I don't have a concern. And now that I'm digesting your question, I still don't think I have a concern about that.
Will you be making the 2005 report public?
Will I be? No, absolutely not. Our file is subject to grand jury secrecy rules. We can legally turn it over to the U.S. Attorney. The exculpatory material that I have to turn over, I can legally do so, but I'm not turning any BS&K report. I'm not making that public.
Did you consult with the U.S. Attorney's Office when your staff interviewed Mr. Tomaselli?
No, he called us. Mr. Tomaselli called us yesterday.
When you were interviewing him, you were apparently trying to poke holes in his story. And
why would you say that?
Because you talked about the Copenhagen high school records and all of that.
He called the office
2 days ago.
What did I say yesterday?
2 days ago.
He called the office 2 days ago, and one of our investigators spoke to him, and it was. I'm not going to go into the details of the conversation specifically unless someone else were to misquote what was said, but basically the conversation was, I'm not getting my phone calls returned, I want to speak to the district attorney. Okay, what would you like to tell us? He told us, and then he indicated that some Syracuse police officers had questioned him about his school records.
No. Okay, so you were able to gather some information that maybe...
But I want to be crystal clear with you. Nobody from this office called Zach Tomaselli to try to poke holes in his story. Not in the slightest.
But it's resulting in exculpatory information that's being turned over to...
But I found that out independent of speaking to Zach Tomaselli. His story is his story. It's very easily verifiable or not verifiable. And certainly, I don't think it's unreasonable. Anybody would want to know, is he telling the truth?
Barring any new victims, is your office done with this, basically?
It's exactly why I'm here talking to you. So,
Do you think
it's been nice meeting all of you.
You said in answer to some of the questions that SU will be okay, the community will be
Yes.
okay. How about your relationship with the police department hierarchy? Is there any means of repairing whatever damage there may have occurred there?
Probably not, but it's not going to affect public safety. You know, I don't know, Fowler's my 13th or 12th chief, I can't remember, and some you get along with, some you don't. Just as long as we all act professional, try to put the bad guys away, that's what our job is. Sir?
Do you think Zach Tomaselli is telling the truth?
I'm going to refer all comments on his credibility to the United States Attorney's Office. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Well, you were just listening live to DA Bill Fitzpatrick, as promised, addressing the ongoing investigation into the sexual abuse investigation into Bernie Fine, saying in his experience, Bobby Davis and Mike Lange's, both of the alleged victims, he says those stories come across as credible and they would be considered credible in a court of law in his opinion. Now, Fitzpatrick says he had there not been statute of limitations, Fine could have been arrested when Bobby Davis first came forward. He says his office also looked into the police investigation back in 2002, found no evidence of a cover-up there. As for the Syracuse University investigation in 2005, the DA says it was inadequate. Fitzpatrick went on to say that both alleged victims, both Bobby Davis and Mike Lange, did the right thing by coming forward. He encouraged other potential victims of abuse to also step forward, tell their stories, and get a little bit of help. He talked for about 50 minutes. Stay tuned for full coverage on NBC3 and CBS 5 News throughout the day. Of course, you'll always find what's happening right now, updates throughout the afternoon on our website, cnycentral.com. Thanks for joining us.